Well, hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Doctors Changing Medicine podcast. I am super excited you're here and even almost more excited about the guest that I have, Dr. Shenelle Wilson. She is a urologist, fellowship trained in urogynecology, and she is a doctor who is out there to change the world. And I'll tell you how in a second. So thank you so much, Dr. Wilson, for coming on today after your busy day, I'm sure, at work.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Una.
Absolutely. Okay, so my first question to you will be this, okay? You're a doc, you're a urologist, you're fellowship trained, you have a great job, you're doing all this, and then you decide that there's this issue with lack of diversity in urology, and I'm going to fix it. So tell me how you got there because I'm going like urology should have been enough.
Well, actually, what happened was the story is pretty similar, but what really happened was I was in the end year of my fellowship, and I was about to start my private practice job, and I had wanted to go into academics initially, but just found that the workforce wasn't diverse enough, wasn't inclusive enough for me to feel like I would thrive. So I decided to go into private practice. And what happened was my brother was applying to urology, and he had a lot of friends who knew that he had a sister who was in urology and were asking him questions. And I also had picked up some mentees along the way during my training, and they were asking questions about the upcoming application cycle when the COVID hit. So, after just getting a lot of different questions from a lot of different students, but they kind of tended to be the same, I just decided to get a group of friends together and put on a webinar for the urology applicants. And essentially, everything kind of blossomed from there in a ways that I could never have expected.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about all those ways you didn't expect because this is good. But I have a question that I'm sure some of my listeners are asking. It's like, urology, urogynecology, where did you find the time? Like webinar? Like mentees? A whole cycle? Like where?
So I would say it was, the coronavirus just affected so many of us in a lot of, unexpected ways. But I tried to, find a silver lining out of it. And so the time came when we were quarantined at home. My specialty is basically mostly elective surgeries. So I was home and wanted to make a difference. And, academics and mentorship was always my passion. And so it seemed very natural to do it when I had that time.
So you had what I called the blessings of the pandemic, right? Like, not that the pandemic was a blessing, right? Like, that was a
Yeah,
complete mess, but there are some things that we got out of it. So you turned that around. I
for
love it.
sure.
So, okay, so let's talk about all the things. So you made a decision. I'm going to do a webinar. I'm going to help these people. And then what happens? So what are all the ripple effects from that?
Sure. So, I kind of from there decided that, what the issue was, and the issue in a lot of healthcare is that there just wasn't enough inclusivity. There weren't enough different minds who were in the field. And so that we just needed to diversify the field. We needed to help students, but not just students, help residents and help faculty attending community urologists and build a community within ourselves. And so I came up with a three-tier mentorship model to affect the recruitment, retention, and promotion of Black urologists. So recruiting them as medical students, retaining them as urology residents, trainees, making sure that enough of them go into academics, and then promoting those of us who are out here trying to make a difference for our community so that our patients can find us and so that students who are aspiring to be in our shoes can find us as well. And so just from kind of scratching all of this on a notepad to typing it out to connecting with people who I didn't even know like a year and a half ago, just through the power of social media and through the connections I had made earlier. We just kind of blossomed from there.
And I'm thinking, how did you know to do all that? Right? Recruit, retain, promote. How did you know to do all that?
Um, I think that anyone who's in the minority in healthcare knows that that's what we need to do. And so it's just been in me as a woman of color who's been growing up in this country and is trained in the healthcare field. I know that the issues that we have, a lot of them stem from our lack of diversity. And so it really wasn't hard to come up with it at all.
So the impressive thing is that you actually took action, right? Because
Yeah,
we know what to do, but you did something about it. All right. So talk to me about what the problem is. Because, we've talked before, right? Because we were both in the Entre Business School community. But what is the problem? Is there not enough diversity in urology? What do the numbers look like?
sure. So there are about 13,000 urologists in the United States, and less than 300 of them are Black. And so that number ends up being about 2% of the urology workforce who's Black. And for Latinx, it's something like 3.9 when, in the US population, we represent 18.5% and 13.5% of the population. So there definitely wasn't enough population concordance within the work field. And we know that minority physicians are more likely to serve in their own communities, serve these underrepresented communities, these under-resourced communities are more likely to give back, to do more with less and have better outcomes. And so it just, you know, urology is a field that affects everybody. It affects the Black community in a prevalent way. We all are very aware of prostate cancer, but also urinary incontinence and prolapse, things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis in my practice, are there's disparities in healthcare outcomes and resources that are given to these patients. And so diversifying the workforce would be a powerful way to get resources into those communities.
So this is when Urology Unbound was born.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now, so your brother and his friends, they're all applying for urology. You come up with this plan, you scratch it on a notepad, you type it up, you talk to some people on social media, and you have a program, right? And I love what entrepreneurship does, right? And I know it's a nonprofit, but still, right? It you can create stuff out of nothing.
Yeah.
It's so fantastic.
You
You
about
can,
it, and as long as you don't tell yourself that it's not possible, because that's what a lot of people do. They tell themselves, well, it'll never change, it's always been this way. But once you have a mindset of course it can change, we just need to figure it out, you start coming up with plans. And sure, if the plan doesn't work, at least you've tried something, you've learned from that, and you can move on from there. But as long as you don't limit yourself, the sky's the limit.
ugh, okay, this is so good. All right, let's go back to your brother. So your brother and his friends, they come with you, all these questions. You set up the program, Urology Unbound. We're good to go. So then what happens? What do you do for them, and then what happens with them after that?
Sure. So really, the Urology Unbound came up. We developed the R. Frank Jones Urology Interest Group, which is our pipeline program, and that's specifically for the medical students. Urology Unbound in general is for all Black urologists, and so we're developing programs for the residents, and we're trying to form a community with all the Black urologists in the country so that we can support everybody in their stages. So with the R. Frank Jones Urology Interest Group, we started having different webinars telling them how to prep and helping answering their questions about the upcoming application season. We developed an application polishing program that paired students with faculty urologists, not just Black ones, urologists who want to make a difference in this space. And they reviewed their personal statements and their CVs, helps them to get everything interview ready, and gave them advice and some coaching that a lot of them don't have because they don't come from programs that have home urology residencies. And so we also did mock virtual interviews because everything was virtual this year. Most of them have only ever interviewed for medical school. Other than that, there's no experience with that kind of way of selling yourself, because that's all really it is. They've all earned their spots. We're not doing anything to make them look better than they are. We're just giving them the tools to be able to shine and to be able to present themselves so that the programs will know that, oh, this is the person you need. um, we were able to connect students who needed research projects with faculty mentors who had research projects uh, that they wanted to have people work on with them. And so students were able to get letters of recommendations after forming meaningful relationships with urologists all over the country, and really just making everything much wider. You know, a lot before everybody was limited by what's in their state, what's at their medical school, and now students who come and work with us, they don't have those limits. They can work with anyone from around the country and get what they need and the support.
You are a rock star.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, you're a rock star. So you did all this stuff with them, and then they had their match, and what happened?
So it was amazing. I sometimes when I think about it, I still get chills. So we had 39 applicants. We have more students in the interest group because we have students of all years, but 39 of them were applying, and out of that, 31 of them matched, which is a 79% match rate, which is above the urology overall match rate, and
That
just
is
a huge
crazy.
windfall for sure. I mean, it was, yeah, it was amazing.
So how did that make you feel? Because it's not like you planned to do this stuff,
Yeah.
right? This is you responding to a problem rather than saying, this is the way it's always going to be. It's not fair, blah, blah, blah. You're like, we're going to fix this. So then a 79% match rate? How did that make you feel?
A lot of things. Like it made me feel hopeful, first and foremost, that maybe we really can change things. Maybe people who are in charge now really they see the issues, they see that diversity is needed. And I mean, in some ways I was like, why didn't we do this sooner? You know, like how much more could this have been? And really a lot of the things that I'm doing now are the things that I wish that I had when I was going through. And so it's like, how much more of a community, how much more connected would we have been if we had done this earlier? But you know, that's fine because we're
Yeah.
connected now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was validating because you're just doing all this stuff, not knowing if it's going to match. You know, I mean, if it's going to work. And I mean, I was preparing for okay, what are we going to do with our students who deserves to match? You know, they're amazing. We get to work with them and actually get to know them, and you know, they should all be urologists. What are we going to do for them when things go the way they always have? And so when they didn't, it was just very validating. I was very proud to be a urologist.
Oh, that is so good. I'm getting chills on your behalf. This is so good. So, what other doors did that open, right? Because the thing about saying yes to something is you don't know all the things that'll happen after. You have no idea what the ripple effect is, right?
Yeah.
So, what else happened because you founded Urology Unbound, because you started making all these connections, because of this 79% match rate? Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, it catapulted me into like the urology frontline. Like I'd wanted to do academics to be able to mentor students. And so that when I would write a letter of recommendation for them, it would mean something. People would know who I was and knew that what I stood for was quality. And, you know, like when I decided to go into community practice, I felt like I was losing that, you know, and through that, I was able to get, you know, multiple speaking invitations at national conferences. And this is like my first year out of fellowship. I mean, I'm not even a full year out of fellowship. You know, I spoke at two national meetings on meaningful topics. I've been able to do multiple research collaborations. I've been able to work with students to get some projects into a diversity issue that's coming out. And most surprisingly, I mean, just out of the blue for me, I was taken aback. I ended up winning the 2021 Young Urologist AUA Young Urologist of the Year award for the Southeast section. And I mean, I was on vacation when I got the email. And so I was like, I'm not opening any emails from work. I just wasn't even going to look at it. But then, of course, you know, you can't really tear yourself away. So I ended up looking at it and I just was staring at the screen for like 20 minutes, just like, what is this? Is this a joke?
Wow, wow, wow.
And then my office, the one of the folks in the practice released that I won this award, and so I'm like, oh, it really is real. They know about it, so you know, it was like my little pinch.
So, in the EntreMD world, we would consider you an entrepreneur, right? You know, And what has this done for your positioning at work, the way you're perceived, the way your ideas are taken, the value that's placed on you? Has that made any impact at all?
For sure. I mean, everybody at my practice has been so supportive. They've all, all called to congratulate. In fact, one of my partners was one of the first donors to our Urology Unbound, the donation page. I was just like,
Wow.
oh my goodness, that's so awesome. They went and released a statement, and they're definitely trying to build the center of voiding and sexual dysfunction, which is where my practice focuses on, and really where I truly shine. And they want to build that around me, and so it's been really great. I was in the hospital the other day, and some of the surgical nurses were like, "Congratulations!" And I mean, it had come out a month ago, but the press release just came out, I guess, a few weeks ago. And so I was like, what are you talking about? About what? And so I just didn't even realize that it had extended that far. And so I know that will be great for my practice, because I'm new in town and I'm trying to build my practice as well. And so patients can find me, know what I'm about, and know that I'm there for them.
I I want you to take a second and just think about this. You're a year out and you're changing, right? Because you're changing urology. That's a whole field. Like people don't really sit down and think, I'm going to change internal medicine. You know what I mean? Like you're changing a whole field. What does this look like a decade from now? What doors would have opened? What changes could you have created? What students, what urologists will be out there thinking, if not for Dr. Wilson, I wouldn't have been here. If not for Dr. Wilson, I wouldn't even know this is a possibility. Like, I wouldn't have had that research paper. Nobody would have opened a door for me to get mock interviews done with actual faculty. I mean, like, it is so insane. I'm so excited for you, not just for what you're doing now, but for the snowball that I know is coming.
Yeah, that's
This
what I'm excited about is the snowball.
is the snowball.
I tell people all the time, sometimes I feel a little like ashamed for taking so much credit because I'm like, well, I also did this for me to build a community around myself because, like, I mean, the people that I've met all around the country, I've never met them face to face. And I consider some of them my closest friends who I go to and like vent to. And I'm able to, in my first year of practice, have a bunch of different people that I can call and run my cases by, ask them questions about how to like improve at work. And so like a lot of this was to build my own community. So I'm like, man, this is like the cherry on top, like that I'm getting an accolade for what I desperately needed.
But I mean, you took the action. And for everybody listening, you're probably not thinking about changing urology, but there's some part of medicine that has been pulling at you, and you're like, why doesn't somebody, why doesn't somebody? Maybe you're the somebody. Maybe you embrace it. Maybe you have an experience like Dr. Wilson of being an instrumental part of change. And you can. For that doctor that's thinking about it, but they're like, well, Dr. Wilson, she's special. That's why she did all that stuff. What do you tell them? Like, they're thinking they could do something, but they just think maybe they can't. What do you tell them?
I tell them, of course you can. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I mean, I it was hard in the beginning and it's still hard now, but like it's hard in a fun way.
I
Like,
love that. Hard in a fun way.
yeah, and I mean, you know, when you see the results, you just start forgetting about the roadblocks. You don't even remember them. It's just okay, that's part of it because whenever you get a result, it's huge. And like you said, the ripple effect, like all of these students who matched this year and they are never going to know a, a time when the community wasn't really together. They're all like, oh, this person's well known. And this, I'm like, we didn't know each other at all before this last year. And so there's this whole generation of urologists who are never going to know that, and they're going to feel connected to their community and they're going to want to stay in academics. And so just imagining how many more will go into academics because they have this support, then how many more students they can reach because they're in a position to reach medical students and write letters of recommendation for them. And then, like, it's just, and then at the end of the day, how many more patients are going to get care? Like all of the treatments that we have for these quality of life issues, because it's not just about life and death. A lot of things that urology deals with is quality of life. So how many more patients are going to be affected by this? Like it's worth it. Like if you're thinking don't do it, just do it, because even one little thing, even if I were to stop tomorrow, there's still all of these students who matched this time,
Yeah,
and the community's still connected whether I'm there or not. And so just one thing at all, like one little thing is worth it.
I love it. So someone is thinking, what? I want to support what she's doing. How can we, the Doctors Changing Medicine community, how can we support what you're doing in fixing the diversity problem in urology?
Well, if you want to volunteer with us, we have need of faculty advisors. We have need of people who have resources on research for medical students. We just have a lot of needs in the med ed sphere. So you can always reach out to us at urologyunbound@gmail.com. Our website is urologyunbound.org. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. It's Urology Unbound. The interest group is a lot more active a page right now. So that's the R. Frank Jones Urology Interest Group. There's abbreviations for those, but you can also just link to those from the Urology Unbound pages.
Excellent. And I heard you say one of your partners was your first donor. So you guys take donations as well?
Definitely. When you go to our website at urologyunbound.org, you'll find the donation page there.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Now,
Oh,
you should.
I was going to say, if you want to find me, I'm at Georgia Urology. So that's just georgiaurology.com. And Shenelle Wilson.
I love it. I will link to all of those in the show notes. So lots of links. Go check them out, people. And I want to invite you to support this mission because remember what we do in this community. We're out here to change medicine. So I usually end with this. At the end of every episode, I tell the doctors, I'm like, you're listening, you have to share this episode. And I believe that there's a million of us, okay? If we don't like the system, we can change it. There is a million of us, right? So, what would be your reason, the reason why every doctor listening should share this episode of the podcast?
Because it'll help to diversify our workforce, finally.
All right. You guys heard her. Okay. You need to diversify, and that is a huge change that needs to happen in medicine. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing it.
Having
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for what you do. And my belief is that this inspires us as physicians to kind of go like, that thing I've been talking about. I felt like I needed to have it all together, but she said she just wrote all these things on scratch paper and then she typed it up and then she went to social media. I can do all of those things, right?
post-it notes all over the place.
Post-it notes everywhere. So my belief is some doc is going to take this and say, you know what? I wanted to be part of this kind of change. I'm going to take a whack at it. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give it a go. And then some other people are going to be like, I love what she's doing. I'm just going to join that mission. And that would be my way of changing medicine. So thank you so much for doing this. And for everybody listening, remember, we're not just a podcast, we're a movement. Be part of the movement. Do your piece and share this with your world. And I will see you on the next episode of the Doctors Changing Medicine podcast.